Let's take a look at using the normal to approximate the binomial probability distribution. I'm not here to teach you about that. I'm just here to show you how to plug it into Excel. First thing we need to figure out is the 0.5 correction. Now you're either going to add 0.5 or you'll subtract 0.5. Now I always like to go with one basic idea. If the wording includes a number, I can write better than that. Either that or I get a fourth grader in here to write it for me. If wording includes the number, the shading should include it. If wording doesn't include a number, so if it doesn't include a number, shading shouldn't. Okay. So if wording includes a number, the shading should include it. If wording doesn't include a number, shading shouldn't. What in the world does that mean? Well, let's look at some examples. Let's say I'm trying to find a probability that we got, I don't know, more than 30. So more than 30. Well, that let me draw a picture. Here's 30. More than means shaded to the right. Now think of your words here. More than 30. Does that include 30? It doesn't, does it? So when trying to figure out if I'm going to subtract 0.5 or add 0.5, I'll add 0.5 here. And then I'll shade to the right. Again, our wording doesn't include 30, so our shading shouldn't include 30. If I look at least 90. Well, here's 90. Does your wording include 90? At least 90. It does, doesn't it? So I'm going to subtract 0.5. At least means I shade to the right. Our wording includes 90. Our shading has to include 90. If I had added 0.5, I moved the mouse when I did that. I just need a little bit bigger workspace here. Okay, if I had added the 0.5 and went 90.5 and shaded to the right, see how my wording includes 90, but when I add 0.5, my shading doesn't include it. So, again, if your wording includes it, your shading has to. Now let's go down here. Let me see, at most 25. Well, here's 25. Now you have to think if that wording includes 25. At most 25 includes 25. And it's shading to the left, so I have to add 0.5 here. Again, if our wording includes 25, our shading should include 25. Let me see, at most 25. Well, I'm drawing a real blank, so I'm going to use a real boring word. Less than 40. So here's 40. Less than 40. Well, that doesn't include 40, so our shading can't include 40, so I have to subtract 0.5. Less than is shaded this way. I can't think what another word for less than is, but that's what we would use. So when we're plugging these into Excel, the value we're going to work with will be 30.5 here, 89.5, 25.5 and the 39.5. Now there's one that's kind of an oddball case, and it's the exactly. So if I look at exactly 20, well, here's 20, and our wording obviously includes 20, so our shading has to include 20. So here you have to both subtract 0.5 and add 0.5. Now, when we get done doing our 0.5 correction, you're going to have three cases. One case where you're shading to the right, like these two situations. One where you're shading to the left, like these two. And then one where you're shading in between, like this one. Or it could actually say in between them. Like if let me show one of those examples. Between 10 and 20. And I'll put less than or equal to's there so it includes them. So here's 10, and here's 20. Now it includes 10 and 20, and I'm shading in between, so I have to subtract 0.5 here, and I have to add 0.5 over here. Because again, our wording includes 10 and 20, so our shading has to include 10 and 20. So again, we'll be between two values here, just like we are with this one. Well, let's take a look at how to do the setup now. Let me start a new page. And let's look at case 1. This is where it's shaded to the left. And let's see, for these I'll say, I don't know, n is equal to 200, p is equal to 0.20. I wonder what the odds are that I can actually make up something that comes out decent here. Okay, so let's say we go through our 0.5 correction, and we end up with 40.5 shaded this way. And we want to put that into Excel. Want to find a probability. Well, this is going to be norm dist, and then we put in our x value, which is the 40.5. Our mean, now the mean here is n times p, so you'll take your 200 times p, and we won't necessarily do it with parentheses, but we'll see it here in a second. And then your standard deviation is n times p times 1 minus p. So this will be the square root of n times p times 1 minus p. Closing parentheses on 1 minus p, closing parentheses on square root, comma, true. Well, let's go plug this into Excel. Okay, so we'll do equals norm dist, and 40.5 comma 200. Remember when I said you do multiplication, you do just the times, not parentheses. 0.20 comma square root sqrt beginning parentheses, and I didn't actually write down numbers there, did I? Okay. 200 times p, which is 0.20, times 1 minus p. Closing parentheses on that, closing parentheses on the square root, comma, true. And that's how we put in the shade to the left case. Wow, I actually came up with a probability that is decent. Sometimes when I make up numbers, they come out hideous. Okay, that's where it's shaded to the left. That's easy case. The second case is where it's shaded to the right. So you've done your 0.5 correction, and let's say I get 44.5. I'm shading this way. Well, Excel doesn't handle that very well because it's based upon area to the left. So we have to rewrite this as 1 minus, and then 44.5 shaded to the left. Now it's always this way. If you're shaded to the right in your picture, you just rewrite it as 1 minus, same number, but shaded to the left. So how we'll put this into Excel then is we do equals 1 minus norm dist, our 44.5 in times, and I'll put an asterisk there for times, 0.2, comma, square root, in times p times 1 minus p, closing parentheses on the 1 minus, closing parentheses on the square root, comma, true, and then closing parentheses. So let's see this one plugged in. Equals 1 minus norm dist, beginning parentheses, 44.5, comma, 200 times 0.2, comma, square root 200 times 0.2 times 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on the square root, comma, true, closing parentheses. And that would be our answer. That actually came out decent too. So far I'm batting pretty good for getting numbers coming out. Now this is the between case. And it'll be one of these three cases once you get done doing your 0.5 correction. Let's see. I'll make up 40 to, well, actually maybe 40.5 to 44.5 or something like that. I don't know. And we're shading in between. Well, again, Excel doesn't handle that at all. So we have to rewrite it in this way. 44.5 shade to the left minus 40.5 shade to the left. If I look at this right here, if I subtract off the area to the left of 40.5, we'll be left with what's in the middle. And now both of these are based upon area to the left, so we're ready to plug them in. So we're going to do equals, and this first one is norm dist, beginning parentheses 44.5, comma, n times p, this is our mean, so we got 200 times 0.2, comma, square root, beginning parentheses 200 times 0.2 times 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on square root, comma, true, closing parentheses on norm dist, then minus, and I'll do the next one right below it here, norm dist, and then we do the one on the left here. One on the left. One on the right. Go back to grade school. Learn left, right. Okay, so 40.5. Maybe I need to play some Call of Duty. I need to take a break. Haven't played Call of Duty in quite a while. Been doing too much computer stuff, I think. Okay, all this is the same. That's why I'm not saying it. 0.2 times 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on the square root, comma, true, and then closing parentheses. Well, let's go put this in. Equals norm dist 44.5, comma, our mean, which is 200 times 0.2, comma, square root of 200 times 0.2 times, beginning parentheses 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on square root, comma, true, closing parentheses on norm dist, minus our second norm dist, and it's 40.5, and then everything else is the same. So 200 times 0.2, comma, square root of 200 times 0.2 times, beginning parentheses 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on a 1 minus 0.2, closing parentheses on the square root, comma, true, closing parentheses on norm dist, enter. And that would be our probability. And that is how you do your three cases. Now, other than that, you just got to identify your n and p correctly. Usually p is given like in a percentage. Like they may give you 30%. And you just have to write it as p is equal to 0.30. And that's how you use the normal as an approximation of the binomial in Excel 2010.